So we're going to be covering the substitution method here. It's explained on the left column, and we're going to actually follow the steps and do the work on the right. So step one says pick an equation and solve for a variable. Okay, so if I tell you pick an equation, the top one or the bottom one, and then solve for a variable. In other words, get x by itself or get y by itself. If I tell you pick an equation and get a letter by itself, which equation would you pick? The top one, the top equation. Why would you pick the top one and not the bottom? Because the top equation already has y by itself. Does that make sense? So step one is to pick maybe the top equation, maybe the bottom one, and get a letter by itself. So obviously I want to pick the top one because it already has a letter by itself. Step two, substitute that variable expression into the equation you have not used. Okay, so if I'm picking the top one, I want to circle this variable expression, y equals 2x minus 3, and I want to substitute it into the equation I have not used, which is the bottom equation. And I want to plug it right into the x or the y? The y. Why? Because y equals this, and here's y. And if y equals this, and here's y, this is going to be placed in place of y. Substitution. So what I like to do is circle, draw an arrow, and then I like to draw another arrow this way and rewrite that equation, but instead of my y, I'm going to write the binomial right in there. So in other words, I'm going to have x plus 3 parentheses equals 12. But instead of my y, inside the parentheses, what am I going to write? 2x minus 3. So what that does, when you take the y equaling a variable expression binomial, you plug it into the other one, what it does is creates an equation that has two variables, x and y, to an equation that only has one variable, x. And now you could actually solve for x. Let's do that. Let's distribute the 3. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Bring down the plus x, that's right in front. Bring down the equals and the 12. And let's continue solving by combining like terms. X plus 6x is 7x minus 9 equals 12. And we're going to add 9 to both sides. Plus 9 plus 9. Going to end up with 7x equals 21. That's, man, even the one's crooked. Okay, sorry. And now let's divide by 7 on both sides. You're going to get x equals 3. Okay, so we have one answer. And on any equation, when you have one answer and you need the other, how do you find it? You plug it back in, right? So at this point, I already know my x value. I need to plug it back in to find my y value, and you can plug it into any equation you want, either the top one or the bottom one. It doesn't matter. You've already used both. So which one do you want to plug it into? Top one. Top one? Sure, why not? You can use the bottom if you want. On the top one, you have y equals 2x, but instead of x, I'm going to put in that 3, minus 3 at the very end, right? y equals 2 x parenthesis minus 3 minus 3. So we're going to take this 3 right here and plug it in right there. This is going to be a 3 right there. So what we really have is y equals 6 minus 3, because 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 minus 3 equals 3. So the y value is 3, the x value is 3. So when we go back to the original system, this system right here has an answer, and the answer is 3 comma 3. 3 for x, 3 for y. Now, of course, if you wanted to double check it, you could go back and plug in 3's for x's and y's up there, 3's for x's and y's down here, and it will give you true statements. Down here, we have more examples. I'll do this one. You follow along, please. So step 1 says pick an equation and solve for a letter. So there's many roads to the same place. Obviously, you want to take the quickest path, the shortcut, the one that's not that long and complicated. So which equation do you think is better to select, the top one or the bottom one?
The bottom one.
the bottom one, and we need to get a letter by itself. Which one do you think is easier to get by itself, the X or the Y? The X, right? So if I pick the bottom equation and I decide to get X by itself, all that could be done with simply one step, subtracting 5y and subtracting 5y. Does that make sense? Okay, now if I would pick the top equation, okay, then I'd have to pick either X or Y to get by itself. So let's say I did pick the top equation, I want to get X by itself, I'd have to subtract 3y and then divide everything by 4. It's a lot of steps. So the quickest route is to pick the bottom equation. I'm going to pick this guy, and we're going to get X by itself by subtracting 5y and subtracting 5y. Now I have X equals negative 5y minus 9. So what I've done is step one, I picked an equation and I got a letter by itself. So I have X equaling this stuff right here. Does that make sense? That was step one. What is step two? Take that variable expression and plug it into which equation? The one you haven't used, which in this case is the top one. I like drawing arrows. Like I said, I want to take this and plug it into my X or my Y? X, right there. Boom. Why am I plugging into X? Because it says X equals, right? I decided to get X by itself. X equals this. Take this and plug it in for X. And like I said, I like drawing arrows, so I'll draw another arrow this way to show my work. You guys are going to have to write small on your paper, sorry. It's not that much space. So I want to rewrite my equation, but instead of 4x, I want to put 4 parentheses, and I might as well plug in the minus. Well, let me leave it blank for a little while. 4x, 4 parentheses, plus 3y equals negative 2. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to plug in the binomial minus 5y minus 9. So let me zoom in and plug in minus 5y minus 9 and zoom out. Is everybody with me? Okay, so we're going to now solve. That's going to be 4 times negative 5. That's negative 20 with the y. 4 times negative 9. That's negative 36. Let's bring down the plus 3y. Bring down the equals and the negative 2. Sorry. And let's continue solving by combining like terms. Let's combine the y's. We have a negative 20y and a positive 3y. So right here on this, just in our heads, we're going to combine it. What do we get? Negative 17y. Let me rewrite everything. Minus 36 equals negative 2. And now what could I do? What should I do? Add 36 to both sides. So we're going to get negative 17y. And to be honest with you, when I write the negative 17, I'm thinking, man, I probably made a mistake. But right here, when you do negative 2, take away 36, you end up with 34. And that's a good thing, right? I kind of feel a lot better about myself now. Because when I divide by negative 17 and divide by negative 17, that ends up being the nice, beautiful answer, what? Y equals negative 2. Boom, we have a nice, beautiful answer, right? Now we have that answer. We need the other answer. What am I going to do to find the other answer? Plug it in into which one? Any one you want, right? So we either go with the top or the bottom. What do you say? Let's go with the bottom, right? So on the bottom we have x plus 5y equals negative 9. Now why didn't I white? I'm hunting wabbit. What? Okay, sorry. Why did I not write the y right here? I put parentheses because y equals negative 2. So I'm going to plug in that negative 2 right in there. And we end up with x minus 10 equals negative 9, which means that plus 10, x will equal 1. So x equals 1. So my coordinate, my solution to the system is 1 comma negative 2. 1 comma negative 2. If I were to graph both of these equations on a xy plane, they would both intersect at the coordinate 1, negative 2. jumping to number 2 right next to it. So I hope that you guys are starting to get a hang of this. Step 1, pick an equation and get a letter by itself. Which equation are you going to pick, the top or the bottom? Top, because it's already done for you, right? The y is already by itself. So I would circle what you're going to plug into the other equation, and then I would draw an arrow, and you're going to plug it into the x or the y? Y. Why? Because it says y equals this stuff. Now, if it would say x equals this stuff, then you'd plug it into the x because x equals this stuff. But it doesn't say x equals, it says y equals this stuff, so you plug it into the y. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, this is already done for you. Sometimes you're going to have to get the letter by itself by doing some algebra. Okay? But right here, it's already done for you. So I'm going to draw an arrow this way, and it's going to be 2x minus 3y minus 3 times parentheses equals negative 4. I'm going to plug in the negative 3x plus 16 inside those parentheses. So let me move this over a little. Let me zoom in. Negative 3x plus 16. Does that make sense? And now let's actually solve this guy by distributing negative 3 times negative 3, that's positive 9x. Negative 3 times positive 16 is negative 48. And let's bring down the 2x right in front. And that's obviously a positive 9. Let me put a plus in front of it. We have the equal sign that comes down in the negative 4 over here. And now we have an equation that we could solve. Let's combine like terms. 11x minus 48 comes down, equals comes down, negative 4 comes down. Then I'm going to add 48. Add 48. I'm going to have 11x equals 44, which means that x equals what? 4. X equals 4. If you divide by 11 and divide by 11, x equals 4. That's one answer. How do you find the other answer? Plug it in. Which equation? Top, bottom, doesn't really matter. I want to go with the top. Y equals negative 3 times x plus 16. And in place of the x, I put parentheses because I'm going to plug in this value of 4 right in there. We're going to substitute this value of 4 right in there. So we end up with y equals negative 12 plus 16, which means y equals 4. So the coordinate, the point of intersection, the solution is 4, 4. If you were to take the 4 and the 4 and plug it in for x and for y, it should give you a true statement. Now, on every single test, if you have time left over, I highly recommend for you to go back and just look at your x value, plug it in right there, and make sure it works, that it gives you a true statement.